All right, looks like we're live, and I am here with my frequent sidekick, Artistic Layman,
Hello, everyone.
and we are going to be talking about the rise and fall of comic book writer Mark Waid. This is one of the sponsored live streams I tend to do, and the idea of these is somebody pays me to talk about a specific topic for about an hour, and in some cases pays Luke to be here as well. I, you can get in touch with me if you have one of these you want to do. Right now, though, I'm not going to be accepting them for a while, just like maybe a month or two. I got a lot on my plate right now. This took a lot longer to get out than I had hoped, but just my schedule's a bit busy right now. So, without any more wasting time, let's get into this. So, Mark Waid, he is one of the biggest voices of SJW horseshit and faggotry in comics right now. He's one of these white knights. He's one of these guys that whine about the creators are harassed because, somebody on Twitter told him to kill himself. And that's a serious death threat, don't you know? He's not even the worst. Guys like Dan Slott are far worse. Dan Slott's another one I could talk about for a while that used to be a pretty decent writer. And these guys have gotten bad in their writing. Mark Waid is currently, well, I don't know if he's currently. I read so few. I think he's currently reading. I think he's currently writing the Avengers. I started reading Avengers in early '98, late '97. Luke, if you could throw up that first comic, that my first Avengers comic. So the date on this comic is February of 1998, but it's earlier than that. It's easily January. I think it actually came out right before New Year's, because I swear I remember my cousin had come over for, that Christmas break, and we'd both walked over to the mall together, and I picked this up at the comic store there. So I think it was maybe right after, maybe it was January, but I swear I think it might have been even the week before. But anyways, that's a sidetrack. This is when I started reading Avengers regularly. Like I think I missed a few issues during a move one time. I was reading Avengers every fucking month. And I read Avengers through ups and downs there. I read when Chuck Austin was writing. That wasn't very good. It wasn't as bad as a lot of people said, but it wasn't very good. Bendis' New Avengers, which started out strong but kind of ran into the dirt. I was reading Avengers, the core Avengers title, all through until Mark Waid's Avengers. You could throw up Mark Waid's Avengers. I made it 3 issues into Mark Waid's Avengers. In what I at that point was, what was this, 2015? So the better part of a 20-year streak of reading this comic book. And it not always being the greatest. I mean, it was usually decent, but sometimes it was really, really awesome. But I loved the Avengers. And this finally got me to fucking quit reading the Avengers. And I mean, I plowed through Jonathan Hickman's pretentious trash. I plowed through a lot of crap. This, though, I couldn't handle it. I tapped out. I said the safe word. I couldn't handle it anymore. It was too much. I mean, just look at it. Just look at the cancer on that. This is who he decided to gather together for the Avengers. We got replacement Black Spider-Man. Can't even have the real Spider-Man on the team. We got Durka Miss Marvel. We got Black Lives Matter Captain America. And we got Feminist Studies Thor. And it is it is every bit as bad as you might think a team assembled of these characters would be. I made it 3 issues into this nonsense. 4, I guess, if you count the free comic book day promo issue, which was free, which is still a bit too much. Really, what's the cover price on it say? Probably like $3.99. Really, you should be paid $3.99 to read it.
Let's see.
$4.99. Well, that was the first issue. I know the first issue is a little bigger than, but yeah, $5. Holy shit. Comics are way too fucking pricey. Side note, I've long defended comics prices against people who complain like, it used to be 75 cents back in the 70s. Yeah, gas was like 50 cents a gallon or some shit. You know, like part of the biggest problem is the money's worthless. But at the same time, a comic book shouldn't be more than $3.99 tops. Tops. Most of them should be $2.99. $2.99 is about the same price keeping with inflation as they've always been. Anyways, that's Mark Waid right there. I read a book for almost 20 years, and that was too much. Couldn't do it. Somebody in the chat says, wasn't he the dude that wanted to fight diversity in comics guy? Yeah, I believe he was. Yeah, that we thought he was going to fight. Diversity in comics is like a fucking Marine, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, Mark Waid, and then he backtracked like a pussy. Like, no, I just wanted to talk to him. Yeah, sure you did. You can talk to him on Twitter. You can talk. You can send him an email. So let's go back though. Let's hop in the Wayback Machine to the halcyon days of yore of the 90s, when Mark Waid was not a shit writer. Mark Waid did a lot of good stuff in the 90s. He basically revived Flash. If you can bring up one of his earlier Flash comics, this is one of DC's flagship characters. And that book was damn near on the verge of cancellation before Mark Waid came along. Now, partly this sort of points to Mark Waid just came along and took a book that was being run into the dirt and just stopped running it into the dirt, essentially. His Flash run wasn't the greatest thing in the world. It was just, holy crap, the Flash is readable again. And that's part of the thing here we're going to talk about. Mark Waid was a good writer. Mark Waid was never a great writer. Mark Waid's quote-unquote great writer status is in large part due to right place at the right time. And you see a lot of this with the Flash. Now, he did create a character in his run on the Flash called Impulse. And Impulse was actually one of my favorite characters. That comic you just threw up there, that's one of the earliest comics I remember buying. Like, I hadn't been reading comics more than a couple years at that point. And Impulse is one of the few teen heroes that really struck with me. As a result of his powers and having had his powers his entire life, he's basically got this like almost hyper ADD about him. Like he's insanely scatterbrained and short attention span. He's actually the grandson of Barry Allen, and Barry Allen would time travel a lot. As the Flash, it's just something he can do. And Barry Allen actually lived in like the 30th century or something for a while. And this is his grandson come back to the present day. Yeah, the Flash, and this has long been canon at DC, but the Flash is one of these characters that and I actually think this is very interesting. His power levels are capped only by how much he's kind of willing to tap into them. The Flashes in DC, the speedsters, they tap into this extra dimensional, semi-sentient energy called the Speed Force. And the problem with that is the deeper they tap into it, the more likely it is they can be lost in it. There was actually a Justice League episode that tapped into this where that Flash, it almost happened to him. So that's kind of the only cap on the Flash's powers. I mean, they can essentially reach speeds that render things like physical distance an abstract concept. I mean, they can essentially run up and down a timeline, and they're so fast they can pierce the fabric of reality. But again, that cap being, they can't get sucked. They can just get sucked into their powers, as it were. The other thing you got to talk about when you're talking about Mark Waid, and it's so hard to talk about this. We're going to have to talk about Kingdom Come. Now, Kingdom Come is, let's be real here. It's in line with Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns in that it is considered one of the greatest things DC has ever published. And with something like Kingdom Come, it becomes so insanely, how should I put this? It becomes so beloved that it can't even live up to its hype anymore. Kingdom Come is a really, really awesome story. It's a really, really great read. It is definitely one of, if you're ever going to read superhero comics, it's definitely one of the things you should read. Let's be real. A large reason why Kingdom Come was so impressive, especially at the time, was Alex Ross's art. Alex Ross was able to, with at times near photorealism, especially later in his career. But Alex Ross could at times get near photorealism, and that added this element of, he captured both the larger than life aspect of superheroes while at the same time making everything feel very real. And that's not an easy thing to do. Alex Ross also did, around the same time, over at Marvel, a series just called Marvels, which followed this reporter who was present at various big events in in Marvel history, just seeing these superheroes through his common eyes. A guy like Razor Fist would say that, you don't really like Kingdom Come, you like Alex Ross's art, and that makes you think you like Kingdom Come. That's not fair, but there's a kernel of truth into it. Kingdom Come, simply put, is not as good as everyone says. That's almost unfair, though, because it's developed a reputation that how could it possibly live up to? The writing in it is really good. The premise of it is it's like a possible future for the DC universe. Most of the old heroes have either gotten too old or gone in exile or retired. And there's a bunch of newer heroes, and these newer, now this was 96, I believe, when this came out, and this was very much a dig on the current state of superheroes, the 90s state of superheroes, the extreme Image Comics type superheroes. In fact, there is a character in here called Magog, who, something of a rival to Superman, is Alex Ross created him to actually resemble the Marvel character Cable a lot, and be a dig on, as he put it, the Rob Liefelding of comics. And again, there's a lot of interesting themes in Kingdom Come. Of, you know, in some ways, it's very socially conservative book. It really takes a dig at the coarsening of culture, at the moral decay that we were facing even in the 90s. And it takes a look at a lot of other things. You know, there's themes of faith running through it. You know, passing the torch to future generations, and, you know, classic themes of how much interference exactly should superheroes do over mankind. It is a good superhero story. And just an example of the good writing in it. I think, Luke, you had a panel of it and all, but there's a scene at the end where Bruce Wayne, Wonder Woman, Diana, and Clark are all at this. It's basically like it's like a Planet Hollywood, but it's all superhero stuff. And actually, when they first go in there, and this was because this was '96, the person that was like the host, that was going to seat him, is a guy dressed like Superman, and he looks just like Dean Cain, the actor from the Lois and Clark show. But there's a scene in there where they're going to tell Bruce, you're like, well, we have an announcement, and, you know, Bruce just realizes, oh, you're pregnant, you know, to Wonder Woman, and you know, they're, oh, how did you know? And, you know, classic stuff. He says stuff like, what's the exact line where he goes, you know, for an ageless Amazon of perfect physique, you've put on a pound or two, which is just such a dick thing to say.
Very Batman thing to say.
There's a scene in here where because Batman is like, he's old and crippled, right? And he hides in his fucking bat cave and sends like these big bat robot drones out to patrol Gotham. And like Wayne Manor is trashed, right? So there's a scene in there where Superman heads to the cave and he goes, what happened to the mansion? And he goes, when my identity was exposed, Two-Face and Killer Croc happened to it. And there's a scene in there where he's talking to Superman, right? And he turns around and Superman's gone, like had disappeared on him. And he just sort of sits there for a second. He goes, so that's how that feels. It is really good writing. It's not as good as everyone says, but it almost couldn't be. Again, a guy like Razor Fist very famously says, "Oh, you know, it just, you only think you like it, you don't really like it." That's not really true, but there is an element to that. Interestingly enough, a large portion of the story is told. A character, the Spectre, who's basically the living embodiment of God's wrath, has chosen this preacher who's grown disillusioned with his faith to help him determine, you know, or how, whether or not the Spectre should intervene and that kind of thing. And the Spectre's just sort of taking him around, you know, Ghost of Christmas Past style, looking at everything and no one can see him, which again sort of harks to the elements of faith in there. But again, getting back to the Flash's powers, there's a scene in there where the Flash, even though he's like this ghost that no one should be able to see kind of thing, the Flash actually is able to see him and yank him out of, I guess, kind of the astral plane. And then he's in front of everybody and has to explain himself. Again, the Flash is too fast to be contained by one layer of reality. That's the other thing. The Flash in this, and I don't think it's ever really explained in the book, but He looks a lot like the Golden Age Flash, but it's sort of hinted around in the book that Wally West, Barry Allen, and Jay Garrick had all fused into one being, that they got lost in the Speed Force. Again, really great read. I highly recommend it. But it's not as good as everyone says. There's no other way to put it. But then neither is Watchmen. Neither is The Dark Knight Returns. And both of those are fantastic. And if you're at all interested in superhero comics, you should absolutely read them. But they are overrated. So that's Kingdom Come. The other great thing Mark Waid wrote, and this is not overrated. This is barely talked about. He has a creator-owned property called Empire, which originally was just a, I don't know, something like 6-issue miniseries or something. I'm not sure how many issues it was because I only read it in the trade paperback. But Empire is basically the story of a world in which a supervillain has completely seized control of the world and he rules it unquestionably. And it just sort of deals with the internal politics under, with all his various lieutenants and whatnot. It's a very interesting story, and it's not, there are no heroes in this story. You're not even meant to view. You're not meant to view any of these characters as heroes. Now some of them are sympathetic at times, but it's not an uber dark story either. It doesn't try to be grimdark. I mean, it's dark because of the nature of the story, but it doesn't go out of its way to just, you know what I mean? Just wallow in the grimdark, as it were. But really good read. I highly recommend it. Again, if you're at all interested in comics, do check it out. He wrote a follow-up to it recently at IDW that I didn't check out because at this point Mark Waid had buried his dick in the dirt. And so that's some of what made Mark Waid a household name. Now, mostly Kingdom Come. Again, right place at right time. He wrote this story, and Alex Ross's art just sold it. It's not a bad story, not by any stretch, but it's not even really the greatest kind of alternate universe story DC has done. I can think of better Elseworld stories. But it's thoroughly enjoyable, and it was one of the few things that was selling really, really hotly in 1996. Basically, Kingdom Come and Marvel versus DC were the only things that were selling out at that time. This is such a weird topic. This is, in many regards, this reminds me of the Lindsay Ellis topic, where it's like initially this seems like, oh, we could talk for hours about this, but as with that one, it's where you scrape past the surface, and there's just not a lot of there. Mark Waid was a good writer. Got lucky, but was a good writer. And social justice is a hell of a drug. He's a whiny faggot that produces garbage now. But isn't that a pretty common story? Not just in comics, but in the entertainment industry as a whole right now. You could look at Joss Whedon. You could look at Patton Oswalt, the comedian. How many people out there where you're like, man, I used to enjoy that guy's stuff, and I can't stomach that fucker now. That's basically the TLDR on this. The too long didn't read. Mark Waid was an okay writer. Social justice is a hell of a drug, though. Now, Mark Waid started writing around 2011, I believe it was. He started writing Daredevil. And Daredevil had gotten extremely ridiculously grimdark for a while there, comically so. And if you watch Razor Fist, and you should watch Razor Fist, it's a great channel. He despises Mark Waid's run on Daredevil with a burning passion. Part of that, I believe, is Razor Fist just wants Daredevil to be forever very, very dark. I don't. And I'm a big Daredevil fan, actually. Daredevil is one of my favorite Marvel characters, period. And I mean, I don't know. Spider-Man's sort of the everyman, but I kind of relate to Daredevil a bit more. He's got something of a very complicated relationship, both with his faith and the women in his life, which is very compelling to me. But I don't think Daredevil has to be fucking dark all the time. In fact, I don't think the really dark moments have all that much impact if they're all that happens. You know, everyone points back to Born Again. I think it was Frank Miller's first arc or one of the earliest arcs on Daredevil, and how amazing that was. And part of that story was Daredevil's life. The Kingpin found out who Daredevil was and he didn't expose him publicly, but he fucked with him royally and just ran poor Matt Murdock's life through the shitter. But see, that kind of thing doesn't have any weight if there aren't also the good times. And so I like Daredevil to be a little bit less dark once in a while, to be just, and Mark Waid's run harkened back to kind of Bronze Age 70s era Daredevil a lot. And there were times when I was really, really enjoying it. And those were the times when Mark Waid set about to just tell basic meat and potato stories. In fact, let me see if I can bring one up. This has just come to mind because this is a good example of Mark Waid doing a really good job with it. Let me see if I can bring it up. I know I talked about it on my blog years ago. Fucking blog, but here. I'll send you a link to the cover. You can bring it up. All right. This is a perfect. Now, I really, really liked his run on Daredevil, but it eventually drug its dick into the dirt, and we'll talk about that. But I liked it at first a lot. Again, it was a very... It started off really interesting. So this particular issue, I'll just read what I wrote about it at the time. I was doing little tiny reviews of the weeks here. In this issue, a mysterious alien shows up at Matt Murdock's office. It claims it had caught a broadcast of a speech Matt gave in a need for law to recognize extraterrestrial rights years ago, and that, combined with an alter ego being an Avenger, is why he sought him out. Now, Daredevil's identity wasn't public at that time, but I guess the alien just knew. He claims a powerful being is chasing him and needs the aid of the Avengers. Just then, the Silver Surfer shows up and is trying to kill this thing. The Surfer explains to Daredevil that the alien was of a race called Achaeans, which are sentient lies who exist on the edge of perception, visible only when it suits their ends to be so. Which, I mean, basically they're space demons. And that it only wanted to sow discord and malice. Surfer has a hard time tracking it, as he has a hard time seeing it with his cosmic senses. So Daredevil... Okay, so this was actually a really interesting issue, and it touched on some classic sci-fi themes and all. You know, not shoving anything in your face, but really interesting concept to it. I don't know if this race had ever been mentioned before or mentioned since, but it should be. But this was good old fashioned superhero goodness at its best. That said, though, Mark Waid quickly ran this into the dirt. He ended up with a storyline where there's some group in the Marvel Universe called the Serpent Society, which I don't even remember them being this way, but Mark Waid wrote them as white supremacists. I don't know enough about them, but I just remember them being Captain America villains that were, as I recall, they were basically just bootleg Cobra from G.I. Joe. So the Serpent Society had infiltrated the New York government on a whole bunch of levels, and the evil white supremacists, because of course. And the only way Daredevil could expose them was to, in court, under oath, admit that he was Daredevil. And that's how he had this information. Now, people had suspected that Matt Murdock was Daredevil for a long time. It was one of those things where nobody could really prove it, but a lot of people suspected it, kind of thing. Well, when you just fucking admitted under oath that you're Daredevil, somehow the previous writer would reverse this with some sort of magic bullshit to where, never happened, whatever. But at the time, it was sort of a holy shit moment, and I couldn't believe it. But then Daredevil ends up moving to San Francisco. And then because he doesn't have a secret identity anymore, he ends up running around in this fucking suit costume. And it just looks awful. I mean, it's the first Daredevil costume you can really believe a blind man fucking made. I don't think Mark Waid's Daredevil run was that bad. I think it got really, really bad, though. Also, and Razorfish pointed this out, it's sort of helped usher in a lot of the SJW bullshit at Marvel. Partly because of the hipster nature of the comic book news sites. Here's the thing. Mark Waid's Daredevil didn't sell all that well. It sold at first, but a lot of people lost interest. A lot of people, well before I did, but a lot of people lost interest in it pretty quick. It did not sell that well. And especially once he went to San Francisco, it did not sell. But you wouldn't have known that if you were checking out like Kotaku or Newsarama or Comic Book Resources or any of these geek sites. They were, and this book was winning awards left and fucking right, but it wasn't selling. It's almost about this point when Marvel began to write for the critics and not for the audience. And that doesn't make you money. And that's Marvel's problem right now. Now, Mark Waid isn't the worst offender when it comes to shit at SJW Marvel, although, again, he did get me to stop reading fucking Avengers after nearly 20 years. I mean, what was this, 2015 when he got me to stop reading Avengers? And I started reading in 98. So we're 17 years. 17 years. My streak of reading Avengers was almost old enough to be on that black couch you often see in the memes. Let me put it that way. It was just a year shy of that. Mark Waid's an interesting case because again, he's capable of writing really good stuff. He needs to be told no a little bit more. When Mark Waid was writing Daredevil stories that were little one-shot stories like the one I described with the Silver Surfer, they were amazing. I loved them. But when he had the problem was he wanted to have the high stakes of grimdark Daredevil without the grimdark. When you're just doing the little one-shot kind of self-contained stories and it's just good old-fashioned superhero fun, that's fine. If that's what you want to do, do that. But when you're doing the whole, like, you know, evil conspiracy running through the New York government and I had to completely expose my secret identity and move across the country kind of thing, those are major things and they're not treated with any weight. He wanted to have the big shakeups of a Frank Miller while at the same time just writing fun throwaway pulp of the Bronze Age. And it doesn't work, buddy. You got to pick one or the other. And he should have just written fun little superhero stories. This is right after Daredevil had finally become an Avenger. So, I mean, you know, like Daredevil had never been an Avenger. He was one of the few people that had not been an Avenger up until that point. And now he was a member of the Avengers. And yet he barely ever touched that in the Daredevil book. I don't think Mark Waid is nearly the hack a lot of people that just hate him think, but he can be. He can be. Interestingly enough, now I've mentioned on here that I used to do the comic stand with my buddy, and I still go up there from time to time, hang out with him, and I actually run their Facebook page for him, just because I'm on Facebook a lot anyways. I'm on the interwebs quite a bit anyways, and my buddy who runs that just has an aversion to social media. But also, what strikes me is if you were to go to that comic stand in Middletown, PA, you know, and you were to go there to the Saturdays market where it's located, and you were to go to their dollar bin, they have a really great dollar bin. You know, not a bunch of throwaway crap, but stuff people read. Marvel, DC, you know, G.I. Joe, Judge Dredd, Star Trek comics and Star Wars comics and stuff people actually give a shit about. Not like a lot of dollar bins where it's nothing but fucking, you know, Deathmate and shit like that from Image or something. But if you were to go check out the section where all the Daredevil comics are, you would find mostly fucking Mark Waid comics. Because you can't give away his run. And people come in selling it to them all the time. Nobody wants it. I mean, literally, it got to the point where and I don't even know what volume because Marvel's so obnoxious with new number ones. But when Mark Waid's second number one, the same writer, and it's his second number one, where he had moved to San Francisco, it used to be like my buddy would, you know, we'd go through comics when he got them. If they were near mint shape, he'd put them in a bag and board, you know, put them in a fresh bag and board, put them out to sell. If they were beat up a little bit, and a lot of them were, he'd just, you know, make them dollar books. And he always, if he bought stuff, and when I was with him, it was the same thing. If he bought stuff, he would basically pay for it with the assumption they'd all be dollar books. You know what I mean? Well, he ended up with so many fucking copies of Mark Waid's run, of issues from Mark Waid's run, he just started putting them in the dollar bin, even though they weren't beat up. It was just like, whatever, just take them. I'm up to my ass in these things. Oh, is that not cringy as fuck? And that's and Daredevil was dating this fucking mystery meat chick too for a while that was just, I don't know. It was like a Mary Sue from Mark Waid's feminine side. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, it just wasn't good. It started off so strong, and in fact, the first issue really blew me away because the artist did this amazing thing where they were cut to basically Daredevil vision. Daredevil can't see, but he has a radar, right? So in a sense, he sees in actually 360 degrees. But the way he sees is he sees the shape of everything around him, right? But he doesn't see color or anything like that. He just sees the shape of everything around him. So this artist would draw like these monochrome views that Daredevil would see of like the way there it is, like that, right? And there was one where he fought a villain called the Spot. And you may, if you ever watched the Spider-Man cartoon in the 90s, you may remember him. The Spot is a villain who looks really stupid and his name is really stupid, but his powers are actually badass. He's covered in these little black holes. They look like the black holes from like, remember Looney Tunes? You could buy a black hole from Acme and it was like a little hole you could throw on something. Well, basically he's covered in these dimensional portals that are like this, these little black holes. And he can project them everywhere and stuff like that. Well, when Daredevil sees him, this motherfucker looks like Swiss cheese. It was so cool. Yeah, there's the Spot. It's an incredibly stupid looking villain. It's a stupid looking name. But tell me you couldn't absolutely own ass with those powers. I mean, if you're smart about it, you could basically take down the fucking Avengers. Yeah, there it is. Look at that. Is that not badass as shit? Like, look how gnarly that looks, man. Oh man, he's coming into the portal in the ground and shit. Oh man, yeah, that right there, I fell in love with that issue. Then I was like, oh man, this is great, and it started off good. It started off really good. It just didn't end that way. Oh, dude, that's so gnarly too. Like the Spot had been sent to like assassinate people at this mafia wedding. So yeah, he literally just makes these two portals, you know, on both sides of this guy and sticks his hands through and breaks his neck like that. Like I said, tell me you couldn't own ass with those powers. Man, I wanted to like his run so much, but it just got bad. Now, let's talk about another cringy as fuck thing that Mark Waid writes right now. Mark Waid writes a book called The Champions. Now, there was a book from Marvel called The Champions back in the 70s, which was actually a pretty good read back in the 70s. It was this oddball little team that had assembled of Hercules, Ghost Rider, Black Widow, and Iceman and Angel from the X-Men. Because back in the early 70s, the X-Men had actually completely disbanded and were basically not around at all. Interestingly enough, I have a buddy of mine who's a huge Ghost Rider fan, right? Loves Ghost Rider's absolute favorite comic book character. And he actually really, really likes Marvel's Hercules and really, really likes Black Widow. And for some reason, he can't stand the Champions. He thinks it's dumb as hell. I don't understand that from him. And I know he might even be listening because I know he listens to it. It's like, what the hell, man? It's like, what's this? 3 characters I love in a book together? Fuck this. I don't get it with him. But anyways, I read it before, and it's fun 70s comics. It's definitely worth checking out if you see the trade paperback somewhere. Well, Mark Waid decided to make his own team called the Champions. He used the name, but it had nothing to do with that team. Mark Waid's team of the Champions is, holy shit, is this the SJW squad? I don't know if you can bring it up here, Luke. I'm a little behind you there. There it is. Okay, so we got the Miles Morales Spider-Man. We got the Mexican kid who's a new Nova. We got the teenage Cyclops who is from the past because the original X-Men have traveled to the present day in Marvel currently. Yeah, comics are weird. We have the Asian Kid Hulk with his faux hawk. We have the Durka Miss Marvel. And we have Vision's daughter, which there was a Vision series a couple years ago where she was introduced, which was actually pretty good. But this is some of the cringiest SJW shit you could ever hope to read. Holy shit. There's actually a line in it somewhere where the original Nova, Richard Rider, returns to Earth. And it was this weird bit of like self-awareness where like he's looking at these people and he's like, why are you all 12 and stuff like that? And he's like, why is Cyclops a kid? And it's like, I traveled. I can't remember how he put it, but like this team is basically describing the current state of the Marvel Universe. And Nova just looks at him and goes, I hate everything about that sentence you just said. It's bad. It's really, really bad. Oh man. It's one of the worst things Marvel's publishing. Basically only Miss Marvel and America are worse. And I mean that's saying something because Marvel's publishing some shit right now. Some absolute shit. So again, I mean, oh, you know what? I almost forgot. I sent you a link to it and we'll bring it up. Let's hear Mark Waid. So let's hear Mark Waid from September 25th, 2007 on the Facebook. Harassment in the, this is a Facebook page he put up on his official Facebook page. Harassment in the industry towards young creators of gender and of color, of gender, Mark. I can't even get through this post, and I gotta of gender. Is that a thing people are saying now? Of gender. What does that mean? I mean, well, technically, human beings don't have genders. Human beings have sexes. But let's put that aside and just imagine that sex and gender are interchangeable. Everybody has a fucking gender, okay?
I have a gender.
Of gender. Oh God. Young creators of color and of gender. Basically, he means minorities and faggots. That's what he means. Minorities and pause loads, all right? Kangs and pause. That's what he means. Kangs and pause. So that's what okay, so young creators of gender and of color, LGBTQ plus creators. You got to put the plus in there. Because no one can keep up with the fucking letters on this alphabet soup anymore. I can't even read this post.
Right. That's right. That's right.
That's right. That's right. I can't even read this fucking post without ripping into it. Okay, so all right. Steady myself here. Let's see if we can get through this. Harassment. And I don't know if you can bring it up. Did Luke? Yeah, there you go. Here you go. You brought it up. Harassment in the industry towards young creators of gender and of color. LGBT.
Really, nigga?
LGBTQ plus creators just peaked. We are at peak harassment, folks. Something awful has happened, and we need to talk. Don't you just love it when a smarmy leftist says we need to talk? Because boy, I have some things to talk to you about, Mark. I just got back from Baltimore Comic-Con, which was its usual one of the best conventions in the nation. Mark Nathan and his crew are courteous, attentive, and most importantly, terrifically sensitive to the safety concerns of some of the creators and fans who feel threatened by the current climate. Alleviating their worries, Mark and his team are knights. Oh, I bet they're knights. I bet they're knights of a particular white variety.
Please think of the children.
Yeah, I bet they're knights. All right. Over the past couple of weeks, a disproportionately large number of younger creators. You mean the 13-year-old girls that are running Marvel Comics right now? The fucking milkshake squad, maybe, of younger creators have been reaching out to me about harassment from angry fringe fans in quotation marks. Yeah, because the people that want fucking Joker to be taking pause loads are the real fans. The people that, as we pointed out with Mark Waid's run, don't actually fucking buy the books, just praise them on Newsarama. They're the fans. With that in mind, the best and most worthwhile moments of the convention came from walking the floor, talking and listening, helping raise awareness. By the way, I believe Mark Waid's the guy who, I think we mentioned this earlier, thought he was going to beat up Captain Cummings. Good luck with that, buddy. I mean, you're not as bad as Dan Slott. See, I accused Mark Waid of being a huge fat ass, and he's not. I had him mixed up with Dan Slott in my head. Dan Slott's the guy who hasn't seen his dick since the Spice Girls were touring. Mark Waid, though, is just your typical soy boy. In fact, I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen a picture. I haven't seen an open mouth picture of him holding a Nintendo Switch. Okay, so too many of the latter we're still ignore the haters. They'll go away, school, until I reminded them of the demented armed fan at Phoenix Comic-Con last May who was arrested just before he could assault a guest at the show. I had not heard of that. Citation needed. Until I could share with them confidently some of the most serious rape and death threats. Is he saying that he got rape threats? Or was it like the milkshake girl got rape threats? I'm not sure here. But somebody anonymously saying, I'm going to kill you on the Facebook. I mean, hell, the school shooter from Florida, he was all over fucking Facebook. Nobody took him seriously. But no, seriously, somebody just blurting out at you anonymously, I'm coming to get you on Facebook is not something you should be fucking worried about unless you're a goddamn whiny victim. Now, somebody repeatedly saying on their YouTube channel, I'm going to be a professional school shooter. That's maybe something somebody should look into. See, it's degrees. Holy shit, you just brought this up. I forgot he's the Archie guy now. I forgot about that. Holy shit, we got to talk about that. Okay, so yeah, he did. He's done the serious reboot of Archie because that needed to be a fucking thing, right? Didn't you ever look at this disposable, goofy fucking teenage comic strip that's run since the 40s and say, you know what? This needs to be more this needs to be less timeless. This needs to be something that will age very poorly. Okay, so I forgot all about that. Holy shit. Like I spent like an hour like fucking looking into Mark Waid shit trying to remind myself of something, and that never even came up. Yeah, he did the Archie fucking reboot because Archie reboot needed to be a fucking thing. It's like, hey, this thing that's like, been around since the 40s? I know better how to do it. Yeah, the serious reboot of Archie. Holy shit, what a train wreck. Because Archie really needed to be serious fucking teen angst. Oh man, you just threw me off there. I forgot all about that. You brought, as usual, Luke killer with the images. I gotta say. Okay, so the folks I talked to, many of them with big megaphones, some of them store owners, a couple well-intended YouTube comments commenters eager to distance themselves from the personal attack ones, all ready to redouble their support to these younger pros. Yeah, I don't think Heather Antos is professional is not what I would call her, except for, you know, never mind. I'm not even gonna make that joke. Okay, so man, you just threw me off there, seriously. Let me bring up the I gotta bring this up. Here we go. All right, so
this is a lengthy post he made.
Yeah, this goes on and on. It's longer than I thought. The actual, and he says the problem isn't the people criticizing SJW shit. The problem is there is a large number of younger creators / professionals / staffers in the industry, a larger number than you could possibly imagine, who do not have the same privilege. They are being harassed repeatedly, and it's getting worse. Okay, you do not go after, when you are a creator, you don't go after the critics. You don't do it. Okay? That's professionalism 101 in the fucking in any entertainment industry. Any director will tell you, no matter how vicious a critic was to you, it isn't worth it. It isn't worth it to go after him. You look like the asshole. Always. All right? Now, a lot in the comic book industry, they don't understand that. I actually got attacked by Gail Simone when I was running my shitty blog that no one fucking read. Okay? She fucking saw the Red Sonja review I gave and sicked her fucking Beta Orbiter fans on me, the old cat lady. And for like a day, my Twitter mentions turned into a sewer pipe. Now, I didn't fucking whine about it and go form a Patreon because I'm not a pussy or a faggot. But it's not exactly pleasant. But at the same time, what I was really just taken aback by is like, wow, stay fucking classy, Gail. This is how you handle a bad review? Holy shit. Like, I felt more bad for her than anything else at that point. Because, again, that's another one that wasn't a half-bad writer back in the day. I used to say that there were two women that were the exception to the rule that women don't understand superheroes and shouldn't write superhero comics. Ann Nesenti, and I'm probably butchering how you pronounce her last name, and Gail Simone were those two. It's down to just one now, Gail. You ain't on that list anymore. He just goes on and on. This is so fucking long. Jeez. Fucking whines like a bitch. I can't even read through all this. I'm sorry, but People of Gender, I think, was when I checked out on that fucking thing. By the way, I was accused of making a rape threat at Heather Antos in, I think it was The Guardian on Twitter, when my response was, because I posted a picture, I like retweeted Heather Antos' milkshake thing and all, and Craig Langley responds to it, would bang the one in the middle, which was Heather, and I responded to it, which was, you might want to have her sign a consent form. She looks like the false rape charge type. How exactly that's a rape threat is beyond me. Other than you heard the word rape and it fucking triggered you. Holy shit. I forgot about the Archie thing, man. What a fucking needless. Ugh. So, yeah, that's about Mark Waid there. I mean, again, I thought there'd be more to this. You know, I'm sitting here with my copy of Kingdom Come, the trade paperback. One of the earliest trade paperbacks the second trade paperback I ever bought. The second collection, like, I think Superman Batman Generations, which was an Elseworld story, that was the first one I ever bought just because it looked really interesting to me. I was kind of so much of a contrarian as a teenager. I didn't initially pick up Kingdom Come because everybody was telling me to fucking pick it up. but this is the second trade paperback I ever bought, and it's my dog-eared copy here. When the hell was this published? 1997. This was published. Now the actual miniseries published in 96. This was published in 97. I picked it up in 98, I believe. I know because I had moved out of Maryland. But yeah, it's the price on it in the back here says $14.95. It would probably be at least $19.95 now. Them Ben Bernanke fun bucks don't go as far as they used to. Might even be $25 now. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, I'm sitting here with it, and I reread it last night just to refamiliarize myself with it, and I've reread it several times. It's definitely worth checking out. Like, Mark Waid's an asshole. Don't get me wrong. Kingdom Come's worth a read. Empire is worth a read. The very, very beginning of his Daredevil run, contrary to what Razor Fist says, is worth a read. The end of his Daredevil run is a flaming pile of garbage. In fact, it's almost worth reading the whole run if you're fascinated by something starting off with near infinite possibilities and potential and going completely into the mud. I think Impulse, the series from the 90s, is a thoroughly enjoyable read. Yeah, I highly recommend it. That said, though, Champions, I would not recommend. Avengers, I would not recommend. The later half of Mark Waid's Daredevil run, I would not fucking recommend. I would not recommend his fucking Avengers issues if you find them in a dollar bin. Which probably in the next few years is about where you're going to find them. Yeah. All right, folks. That's about an hour there. I hope. I apologize. This stream is a week late. Like I said, my schedule's a bit hectic here. I'm still stuck on a very, very early first shift, which for a night owl like me is not a good time. Got to get up at 4:45 in the morning. I'm not happy about it. But I am glad to be working regularly, so I can't bitch too much. And tomorrow night, we got a big show. We'll be talking about Billy Graham's death, the shooting, of course, gun control, topics like that. Speaking of comics, we'll be discussing Marvel's recently announced Fresh Start status quo that'll be launching in May, where it looks like they're going to be trying to get rid of some of the SJW bullshit. And a couple other topics. Do check in on that. Folks, if you enjoy the show, if you enjoy the content I put out, do check out the Patreon and the PayPal. You can support me that way. There's always super chats if you're listening live, and there's an Amazon wish list. And I gotta get a fucking Coinbase thing done up. Oh man, I gotta get that done. I'm so fucking behind on shit. Oh, and there's an animated video coming, Luke, isn't there? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you if you could give the audience an ETA on that or not. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
I'm finally getting around to getting it, but it's only like a fifth of the way done right now. So I would like to project it in less than a week.
Okay. All right. So that's the estimated time of arrival on that. This animated video is a response to Davis Arini's review of Black Panther. In which I don't really take issue with Davis's review of the movie itself, because I haven't seen the movie and I'm not a particularly big Black Panther fan, and I'm certainly not happy with the retard circus surrounding it. But I do take issue with his take on superheroes in general. And I think it's going to turn out to be a pretty good animated video. And I do address the fact that it's been too long since we've had animated videos. I'm going to get back in on that a little bit more. So, like I said, folks, if you enjoy the content I put out, you can check out the PayPal, you can check out the Patreon, you can check out the Amazon wish list. Obviously, there's super chats when you're listening live. I know it's a very popular thing now. All those things help me keep doing what I'm doing. And also, if you're a cheap bastard and you can't send me just a simple little $1 on PayPal, you cheap bastard, you cheap fucking Jew. No, I'm just kidding. But no, seriously, if you can't donate, I understand that. I certainly understand what it's like to have money tight. But you can like, comment, and subscribe. That helps me out. You follow me on Facebook and Gab. That helps pass these streams along if you enjoy them. That all helps pass the animated videos along. Those are good bite-sized little videos. That helps this channel grow as well. Believe it or not, since I monetized in order to get the super chats, I do get little bits of ad money. It is real pissant little amounts, but nonetheless, nonetheless, every click helps. And I ain't kidding when I say it's pissant amounts. But hey, penny saved is a penny earned. So yeah, that's all we got for tonight, folks. I want to thank you all for listening. I hope this has been a great stream, and Beckloff out.